Practicing scene work without words, or with very few of them, is one of the best acting exercises you can give yourself. Learning to use your physicality, your emotional reactions, your voice work, and your environment is what will turn you from someone who just says words real good into someone who embodies compelling characters, relatable, believable ones, from words and way better acting. And you can still do the storytelling with it while also becoming a better actor. So in this episode, I'm going to tell you why you should consider practicing scenes in this way to make your performances better. And I'm going to give you 3 different improv exercises that you can use to build up this skill. You can even do some of these exercises on your own, solo improv style. Hi, I'm Jen DeHaan, and this is Your Improv Brain. I have taught and coached improv at a few different theaters, and I now have a studio where I perform and produce improvised comedy podcasts like GRAC Public Access. I really enjoy sharing what works for me in acting, performance, improv here in this show, in case it might help some of you out there, because we all are so different. So maybe my different will be similar to your different and be useful. I don't know. On that note, this topic of not using dialogue might lead to a concern for some of you. What if you have difficulty reading nonverbal cues or tone or subtext? Or maybe you only do audio improv like I do a lot of. Does this kind of work, these exercises, leave you behind? Because I don't know about you, but I love this style of improv that I do, this really verbose one, because it's so highly verbal. I like using words, and I do a ton of audio-based improvising too. But stick around, because by the end of this episode, I will answer that question and concern directly and show you why this idea and these exercises can actually be a huge benefit for your learning too. It's so easy to rely on words in improv, and it's fine to use a lot of them in your scenes. I love a good mid-scene monologue. I love a quick back and forth witty banter. I also love getting right into the skin of a character, right into their skin suit, and add that element to the scene simultaneously with the dialogue. I love the feelings of that character and seeing the world through their eyes, through their point of view, and vocalizing them in very specific ways can be fun. Generally, all of it is better than just being me, myself. And it's often a lot easier to get there, to get into skin suit town, if you allow yourself to adopt your character's physical and verbal characteristics, to express what they're feeling with your whole self, including your vocal tone and so on, and to actually use that imaginary world that you have developed, use that in the scene to its fullest extent. And to do that, you often have to take your time. You have to let the scene breathe a little. And you can't rely on the dialogue entirely. This is a very useful tool for one of the really common problems in improv, which is rushing scenes. When you take the dialogue away, you are forced to slow down. You get to live in that scene. You can breathe in that character. It's kind of like a slow burn. And the relationship and the story can build layer by layer through the actions and the reactions, even before a single line is ever spoken. You're showing, you're not telling. So a lot of this connects to that well-established acting advice, show, don't tell. And I actually believe that you can and you should do both. Show, don't only tell. You can show and tell. But when we over-rely on that telling, that's the issue. Our scenes can kind of feel flat. But by practicing the showing part, we are making that telling part, our dialogue, that much more impactful when we do use it. And as an aside, remember that showing is through vocal tone and expression as well. But how do we practice this? So I am going to give you 3 exercises that you can take to your next rehearsal or even try on your own to get reps in this. So our first exercise is about stripping the language down to its absolute basics. And that's so you can't use dialogue to express the meaning, the story. You still have words, but you're using everything else, including tone, to express the story. So exercise number 1 is at least it's not gibberish. Yay! This one is nice and simple. 2 people up to do a scene. The only thing that those 2 players are allowed to say for the entire scene is the next letter of the alphabet or the next number in a sequence, or letters or numbers. So one version of this is where player 1 says A, player 2 says B, player 1 says C, and so on. Or 1, 2, 3, and that's it. But the way I like to run this scene, very common way, is where each scene partner can use multiple letters or numbers in a row if they wish. This is a better version. I like it better because you can bring the cadence into the fold, the speed at which you are saying words. So let's use this version for the example where each letter or number represents a word. The goal is to communicate everything else, the relationship, the environment, what's happening, with only those things. No dialogue, no words. You can say the number or the letters in an emotional way. You can express your story with tone and volume and cadence as well, how fast and slow you speak. Through pauses. And you can use your body, your facial expressions, and your space work to build the entire world around you. It forces you to communicate on a different level. If you're practicing on your own, you practice telling the story as a monologue to an imaginary audience. You're practicing exactly the same skills, adding tone and meaning, minus the relationship with the scene partner, of course. You build that story on your own. And one quick note before we move on to the next exercise, this exercise is pretty much the same as any gibberish improv exercise where you kind of invent a language on the spot. You might have noticed by the name that I gave this one. For me, I'm someone who really dislikes gibberish, as you can tell. So this, to me, is an improved version of the exercise because you remove that element of needing to invent the sound of a language or kind of relate it to an existing language, which can be a problem as well. So this way you can get out of your head, you can get out of your own way more effectively and just focus on what we're learning for this task, at least good acting and storytelling. So that exercise uses verbals and turn taking. Our next one removes dialogue entirely at the top of the scene. So exercise number 2, no words at the top. Quite literal and to the point. So for this one, you're going to build the entire base reality of your scene without using any words at all. You could set a timer for, say, 30 seconds or even a minute at the top of the scene if you want. And for that amount of time, no one can say anything. You have to use your space work, your physicality, and looking and reacting to your scene partner to do all of that storytelling for setting that base reality. And once the timer goes off or your coach gives a signal, players can start using words and continue the scene as they would normally. And the dialogue that follows should, of course, build upon that reality already created with the silent, non-dialogue scene work. But the players don't need to start talking right away. They can wait until they're ready. So one of the coolest parts of this exercise is seeing what your scene partner interpreted from your shared silent world. Their idea of what was happening might be very different from yours if you're inside the scene. And making those connections and sort of justifying anything that might not work is often very rewarding, fun stuff, and it's a great learning experience as well. These exercises, all of them, can feel a little strange at first, but I think that they're worth that feeling. But if you're getting value out of this episode, please click the like button to let me know, or come to the Improv Update Discord and chat with us. And subscribe wherever you're listening or watching so you don't miss future episodes that come out every week. I also have downloadable resources that include more exercises, just like the ones in this episode, and they're at my website, improvupdate.com/downloads. And there's a free improv worksheet as well if you join my newsletter at that site. And if you already get it, it's linked at the bottom of each message. All right, so our final exercise gives you words back, but it makes all of them incredibly precious. So exercise number 3, if you say more than 3 lines, you might explode to bits. A verbose title for an exercise against verbosity. Neat. I have done this exercise many times with the great teacher Shannon O'Neill. I mean, legendary teacher Shannon. I think I'm supposed to attach legend to the name somehow. Anyways, she might have come up, by the way, with a different name for this exercise. Not might, she absolutely did. And I don't remember what she called it. Definitely, though, not what I'm calling it here, but I doubt that she'll see or hear this anyways. So it has a new name now. So for this exercise, you'll do a scene for a set amount of time. It might be 3 minutes, it might be 5 minutes, whatever you want to do. But here's the catch. Each scene partner is only allowed to say a preset number of lines. For example, in a 3-minute scene, each player is only allowed to say 3 total lines each. So 6 lines across the 3 minutes, 3 each. You have to make those lines really count. You have to use everything else at your disposal to make that story work, to make the scene interesting. Your body, your emotional reactions, the environment, the way that you say your sentence, and that oh so valuable sentence. That is to communicate what's happening in the very, very, very long spaces between those lines. It will feel way longer than a minute. Your tone, your cadence, your volume. This teaches you the power of economy in language. And it can also lead to some really cool and detailed physical dialogue as you try to communicate maybe complex ideas without speaking. So you have to use your acting. This is all about the acting. And by the way, you can spend all those 3 lines right at the top of the scene if you want, but you have to still go the full rest of the scene, right? Make yourself do a challenge. That's really fun too. If you're doing this one on your own, generate a suggestion from an app or pick a random word in a book, set a timer, and go. But of course, you can't do a monologue. You've only got, say, 3 lines or whatever you set up for yourself. I recommend imagining your scene partner's responses and see if that works for you. Start with your space work, say your line as you would as if somebody else was there. But then imagine your scene partner's reactions, words or not, and keep going, leaving those big, long pauses to do your scene work. Keep imagining your partner's reactions to it. How might they respond to whatever you're sending out? And proceed as you normally would in a scene with another person. So your mileage might vary on that suggestion. Doing this style of improv really works for me, though, I think because I have a visual imagination called hyperphantasia. I can do scenes like this quite easily all the time to practice improv or do solo recorded work. But maybe it works quite differently for people who don't have a visual imagination. So I'm not too sure, but you might need to adjust this one accordingly. But if you do try it out, let me know. Leave a comment about how this works and what your revisions are. Iterate, work on it, see what works for you. Our brains are all very different. And I love that. I love figuring this stuff out. It's why I'm here doing this thing. Now you have some exercises to try out, but the very nature of what these exercises are bring us back to that question that I posed for some of us. What about that gosh darn subtext? So those of us who have difficulty understanding subtext, body language, tone, we might hear about these exercises and feel some dread, a pit in our stomach. And yes, that is very valid, but you don't necessarily need to use or understand subtext and such to communicate in this way. So here's the thing. Those of us who don't really get subtext, we sometimes also, or another thing, some of us need more time to process some of these things, or perhaps we just don't see or pick up on it at all. That's fine. At the same time, we're often particularly good at something else to compensate, at noticing things, at seeing them still. We might just not be able to process or fully understand it yet. But improv is great because whatever we make up in lieu of an actual understanding about these things that we see is still valid and correct in our scenes in improv. So focus on whatever you notice or hear. And remember that in improv, however you respond and interpret is valid for your character in that scene. It's still correct. Because humans with different forms of processing and neurotypes, etc., exist in real life. We're here. So they can exist in fictional stories and on stage as well. So what's also great is you can show and you can tell as needed in a regular scene. It's always okay to ask your scene partner what they meant by something. And if you don't know what that strange glance was about, it's always okay to ask in character. What the hell, Gary? Why did you look at me like that? Something like this is a useful move when you need it. And yes, you're telling, you're not showing, but that helps make that part of the scene clearer for everyone, including the audience. So that question, if you have difficulty with the subtext, tone, etc., these signals, processing time, whatever, does this non-dialogue based exercise work leave you behind? No, it doesn't, because it's not really about subtext in these things. It's about the overall context. It's about observation, feeling, and listening. It's about what you can see, about what you can do, about what you can hear beyond the dialogue, whatever you want to interpret that as, and how your character feels and responds. So you can lean into whatever your strength is in observation and listening and process it in whatever way or whatever speed you normally do day to day. So this work is for everyone, and it makes all of us better, more grounded performers. You might have to ask for things in different ways for these exercises, play around a bit, but in a normal scene, the telling side of show and tell is perfectly fine whenever you need it as a tool. So I guess I'm coming to this as the show and tell mindset, which might bring on an improv controversy. I don't know what people care about, but a quick note. I will be doing an episode all about using pauses effectively in your scenes, in acting and in character work later on. And that will build on a lot of these similar, same, whatever ideas. A lot of these ideas, we'll keep going with them. We'll be embracing pauses because it's such an important part of acting. And it's also helpful for various brain types, such as those with the auditory processing differences like mine, so we can accommodate our processing needs and be better actors as a fairly noteworthy bonus. So thanks for tuning in. I'll be back next Monday for the next episode and to apologize for the show and tell improv controversy, I hope. After all, I'm Canadian, who got to use the now canon improv phrase, get to skin suit town in this episode, because it becomes canon if you use it twice. Call back. Bye for now. Sorry. You have been listening to Your Improv Brain, a Stereoforest production. This show is created and is written, edited, and produced by Jen Hahn of Stereoforest.com. You can find show information, show notes, transcripts, and contact information at the show's page at stereoforest.com/improvbrain. Thanks for listening.